is a different.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. The item on the work session today is a draft memorandum understanding with Maryland Stadium Authority. Scott's going to give us a heads up about what's going on.
Yes, you have before you the draft MOU from the Maryland Stadium Authority that would authorize them to engage in a Phase 2 study of the site proposed for the multi-event center. The site is at the parcel of land at corner of Summit Avenue and Baltimore Street. The study will consist generally of an environmental study, parking analysis, preliminary site due diligence, and a cost estimate for the project. The precise scope of services will be determined during procurement. There is $300,000 not to exceed. That would be a direct draw at the state level, not require the city to have any outlays or pass-throughs in this process. There would also be a traffic study done that the city would do as a normal course of business. The timeline that I had sent to you all last week, I think, basically would be a discussion tonight, special session for you to approve or not approve entering into the MOU next week. And this would then go to MSA on the 3rd of October. They would review it on the 8th of October, and they would approve it on the 8th of October at MSA. On the 14th of October, thereabouts, they would present to us a draft RFP. We would be able to review it at that point, and then the timeline would be somewhere in the week of 10/21 to somewhere in the week of 10/19. That RFP would be distributed out. There would be a site visit and a pre-conference somewhere in the late October timeframe. The proposals would be reviewed. There would be an 8-week period there to receive RFPs back, and then somewhere around the 8th of December, the group would review the proposals. There would be oral presentations to the selection committee and the selection of the consultant before the end of December. The city, as part of this selection committee, would have 2 members. That is up to you all to decide who those 2 members would be. The presentation of the complete RFP would, in about a 9 to 12-month period, would be a go or no-go point for you all at that point in time. So I would say probably about this time next year, all of that analysis would be done, and you all would get to say yay or nay to it. MSA has already received copies of the 2012 studies that were done, so they will have those to refer to. The timeline that was above there is basically fluid beyond October 8th. We'll take as much time as we need to take on this RFP to make sure that at least the basics are covered. And then as the RFP would be in development, we would then be able to have more direct input as to what we want to see included in it. Most of the respondents, according to MSA, would be primarily architectural engineers that we would expect to see respond to the RFP. And any questions you may have on this, I will certainly attempt to answer.
Just one question I had. It says on page 2, the estimated cost of the study is $300,000, and the actual cost will be determined upon completion by the authority of the procurement of services. And then in D and E down there, it says, unless agreed to in writing, the city will not be required to advance or expend any more than the $300,000 provided in the grant. And in E, the authority will not be required to advance or expend any of its own funds for the study. So what do we do if the actual cost of the study comes in or is determined to be greatly in excess?
Well, we'd make sure that we put in not to exceed $300,000. In the RFP, we would say it not to exceed $300,000.
So this
I just want to understand, the state is paying the authority directly
It's going to be a draw between funds. There,
between those two state entities?
yes, yes. We're-
But this document says, doesn't say that, it says the city. I mean, it reads as if the money's coming to the city.
No, okay.
And then
I can make
going-
sure that's clarified in there before we sign it. But that's how it was explained to me, that it basically is sitting in in whatever state pot that these things sit in, and MSA would just do a direct draw from those funds. We would not touch or pre-fund or anything,
But we
this
would see the invoices
300,000.
before the draw.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure. We would also run it through the grant master here, just so we would be able to monitor that through our grant system, even though we wouldn't have touch of any of the money.
And my only concern is, I agree, I think the agreement needs to say.
Yep.
What we understand it is, that the city isn't
The
responsible.
city is not responsible for any of it.
I can make sure that gets in there for you.
Great, thank you.
Who issues the RFP?
MSA does.
Who picks the prospective consultant?
A selection committee, 3 MSA staff, 2 city-selected staff
That we
would
get to
pick.
select.
Yeah.
I believe those two people ought to be Rodney and Scott.
Did they know ahead of time that this study was gonna cost 300,000 when they asked for the money, or are they just using that number because that's what's available?
They're just using that number because that's what's available. It could come in less than that. If it does, obviously, that money goes back to the state.
But what
It
if
can't go
goes
over it.
more than that?
It won't go over it, because that'll be the not-to-exceed part.
So they'll only do
They are
a
very
certain
clear.
amount of study. Like if there's more, it would be like a phase 3, heaven forbid.
I would hope that the selection committee would not select an RFP where it comes back in and says that if this goes over $300,000, you gotta figure out a way to pay it. It'll be part of the do not exceed, and we would not. If someone would respond and say, there's a chance this could be over $300,000, or you have options to go over it, no, $300,000 is it.
Well, I would suggest, given the fact that the majority of the selection committee is not going to be made up of the city, that may not be practical, nor do I really care. I mean, I don't care if this is a $500,000 study.
Yeah, I don't either.
I care what the city's paying.
Right.
And as long as everybody understands the
Right.
city is not paying a penny.
Right.
I don't care how much it is. So I wouldn't, they can spend as much money as they want on this study, as long as it's understood the city is not doing it. And I would just assume them have a majority for the selection committee. It's their money. And ultimately, the largest contributor, as I understand, would be probably the state of Maryland when it comes to building a stadium. So I have no problem with that.
Yeah, when I unfortunately spend a great deal of my time reading contracts, and what got me on this was, basically, it was pretty adamant that the authority will not be required to advance any
Oh, I
money.
totally agree. I read the
But
same thing.
Unless agreed to in writing, the city shall not be, what
should-
We
happens?
can just put in there, the city will
Will
not,
not.
shall not, under no circumstances will we.
Right.
That's, I think, the only important thing that we need.
Catch Austin.
And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
Your expected time frame. I mean, I'm hoping this thing gets completed as, expeditiously as possible.
Expeditious was 9 months, according to MSA. 9 months from 9 months from RFP approval. Or from selection, I'm sorry.
So like summer 2020.
September, probably.
I'm hopeful that with the information they've gotten from 2012, that there's not a lot of, they can use some of that, and that'll speed things along
Sooner
too.
the better.
There's also, I mean, that's just kind of technicality, but on on page 3 there, it has administrative officer. I would assume that it'd be okay to put me in there for that.
I'd assume that too.
Okay.
Now, indirectly associated with this, and consistent with what we were told at the meeting in which this was approved by a majority, from Dan Spedden and Delegate Quarterman, I guess I'm under some assumption that they are going to concurrently be working on the deliverables that they indicated, one of which was legislation to provide that the Maryland Stadium Authority, I guess that's the entity, would be able to assume debt responsibility for such projects, which I don't
that's
think
good
they
as-
have now.
I think that's a good assumption.
And then the second would be, I would assume as well, that they'll be submitting for, I believe they indicated, financial money for, or funding for design or engineering.
I think that's a good assumption, yep. I haven't heard anything to the contrary in any discussion I've been able to be a part of.
I mean, I just want to make sure those
Yep.
things are happening concurrently, given the fact that we were sort of encouraged
Yep.
to move forward under the auspices that that was actually going to occur.
I'd
That's
say
the
they
reason
absolutely,
we
I
were
think
pushing
they're
so hard.
occurring, yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else? So we're good with Scott and Rodney as,
I think that makes the most
Yeah,
sense.
I'm good with that.
okay.
We can do that. I'll get these updated and, to get this to MSA in the morning and, get it back to y'all. Thank you very much.
That's it. I want to note that we were asked to wear purple, and I see almost everybody at this table has purple.
I know, thank you. Who doesn't have purple?
I think it's great
Oh,
to support the
Scott.
Ravens.
That is not purple.
You're colorblind.
It's not purple.
All right, cut, we're done.
It's not purple.